about the enemies. The enemies you can't talk to so easily. I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country, because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Albert. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people are talking about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not. But I do get tired of seeing the country with.
Why would?
Always a thought, right? Well, no, not new news, is it? This has been on Trump's mind, he said, for 40 years. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Hope you all had a really great weekend, hopefully a dry weekend. I did not have a dry weekend. Good morning, Rob. It is so wet outside. You know, my chicken coop it's bad. Thankfully, the chickens have a dry area where they can run around. I can kind of lock them in one side of the coop so they don't get all yucky and muddy. You know, I kind of thought that chickens would probably stay out of the mud, but it doesn't seem to work that way. They just kind of go wherever they want to go. Good morning, Linda. Hopefully you guys did have a good weekend. I was a little worried at one point. You know, I have a creek out back. It's like a natural stream that goes through from some of the natural springs here on the property. And there's usually a pretty steady stream that goes through. I guess the story is that many years ago, people used to come here to my property and the one next door, and that's where they would get all of their drinking water. It's a really nice, pretty clear stream of water, but it's usually, you know, not, you know, it's more than a trickle, but nothing crazy. And all of a sudden this weekend, I couldn't believe it. I went out there and it was, you know, I mean, I'm going to guess probably about 8 feet deep, you know, based on the way I saw it. It was about probably 15, 20 feet wide. I've never seen it like that before. You know, I can't see it from the house, but I could see it on the camera. And I thought, man, that's not too far from the coop back there. I'm like, the last thing I want is for all of that water to rise up. And I was going to have some house chickens, but thankfully it went down. The system worked as it should. I believe it drains into the Kaskaskia at some point down the way, is the way I understand it. But I know a lot of you, I saw a lot of Facebook posts from different people this weekend who are really facing some serious situations with flooding, basements flooding, you know, front rooms flooding. I have a friend who lives close to a I don't know what you want to call it, not a drainage ditch. I'm not really sure what it is, but the water rose up and came into his front door and was like flooding his, you know, it didn't have a basement, it was just flooding his living room. I thought, man, that's terrible. You know, we've all probably been there at some point or another and had to worry and deal with flooding, but hopefully it dries out. What I'm really worried about is tonight we're in this, at least in this area, we're expecting a, not maybe, they said a freeze. I know it's going to, I don't know what it's going to do to our plants. I haven't planted anything, but I'm kind of thinking now that this happened, I can get out and do some planting. Will we have another freeze after tonight? Maybe, maybe not. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Sherry. And good morning, Glenn. No, Glenn, you just need to watch the show more often. I've had that flag for a long time now. I'm going to tell Glenn he needs to be watching the show. But good morning, Glenn. And so, no, the flag's not new, but I do love the flag. I can't remember when I put that up. It's been quite a while now, several weeks. But I do hope I do hope that things dry out this week. I'm ready to get some planting done. My entire garden's underwater right now, but hopefully it'll dry out. This is exactly what happened to me last year, by the way. And it probably happened to you guys too, where I didn't get out until early enough. And then I waited. And then all of a sudden we had this massive downpour for days. My garden was underwater, too muddy to till. Then by the time it was dried out to till, I was far past the date and I got everything planted late. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Good morning, Mary. And just giving you a hard time, Glenn. You know, I'm sure you guys have seen stock markets are crashing around the world. Around the world. Japan had to close its stock market today. early this morning because they are crashing around the world. But this is what happens. It's part of the process. The federal, uh, we're going to have a meeting today. And of course, I forgot what it was. The Federal Reserve, it's called, for a closed door board meeting today, an emergency meeting. They're like, what is happening? But I'll tell you what, and I'd be very curious, does the stock market affect you? Does it? Does the stock market crash affect you? I'm going to say that it does not affect most Americans. It doesn't. Now, it might in the form of some of the, companies that typically trade stock at the top, might suffer a little bit. That might trickle down, but most of those companies were inflated anyway. The stock market was pumped up through the Biden administration. That's not natural. It's not where it was supposed to be. We all know how they manipulated the stock market to gain wealth. Of course, that's where with the insider trading, they would intentionally inflate certain stocks so that they could make their millions to billions of dollars and then kind of run away with it to the bank, leaving everybody else just kind of in the dark. So the numbers were already inflated. I was reading something the other day that said the top 0.01% of all Americans, they own the stock market. And the people who are the lower 50% of Americans either don't own stock or don't own a significant enough amount to make any difference whatsoever. We're the people who are saddled with the debt. That's what we are. The bottom 50% of people in this country are the ones saddled with the credit card debt, the ones who are going to work every day, trying to make ends meet. So I'm going to say that study is probably true, that the stock market crash doesn't really affect most Americans. It really, I don't believe that it does. And Glenn says the Fed will lower interest rates. Yes, I believe they will. And that's the entire point of Trump doing this, is to make sure that we get those interest rates lowered. And Sherry, definitely affects me, but I'm diversified, no worries. And Sherry, I have a lot of stock and my stock is bottomed. Completely bottomed out. Like there's nothing left, completely bottomed out. But you know what? You just hold on to it. You still have the same numbers of shares. They're just not worth as much, but that will change because we're going to become a stronger country for these tariffs and for all of the changes that are being made. We're going to be a stronger country. Don't think we won't be. And Jay says it affects gas and oil, which affects all of us. Yes, but yes and no. It does, but they will make sure that doesn't happen. We're going to be facing the lowest gas prices we've seen since Trump's last term. It's a rough patch. It's a rough patch. We'll get through the weeds and we'll come out on the other side. And Sherry says most Americans are only in the market through their 401k, mutual funds, through jobs. Very true, Sherry. And Robert, what is somewhat funny is the libs want to punish the top 1%. And the stock market drop hurts them the most. But they complain the 1% is hurt. I know it doesn't make any sense, does it, Dave? I have a 401k match at work, but that's for 15, 20 years and less than 20,000 paycheck to paycheck here. Dave, that's most Americans, most Americans. And just like she said, if most Americans, if you have anything invested in the stock market, it's through your 401k. It's through different work-related investments. And unless you're ready to retire, you're going to hold on to those. And Trump's going to make this country a better country. We're going to be in a place that maybe we've never seen, which kind of worries me because if you guys know the story about Gaddafi over in Libya, it's exactly the same thing. They were in, great despair. And then Gaddafi came into play and he made them an absolutely amazing country. And of course, the rest of the world just couldn't handle that. And what did they do? They had to take Gaddafi out. And it's similar situation with Donald Trump. He's here, he's doing the right thing. He's making America literally great again. It's a process that we all have to follow, and we will come out better on the other side. But but what's going to happen then? Because I'll tell you what, the powers that be, they don't want this to be a great country. They don't want you to be tax free. They're making all their money off of your tax dollars. And I'm very concerned, for our near future when a lot of these folks at the very top, the ones who pull all the strings, are realizing that there's a good possibility that America might become a wealthy country. and that Americans won't be working their butts off and paying 73 cents of every dollar they earn into the kettle. And of course, the kettle being the money that they steal from. So I don't know what's coming, but I'm a little bit concerned about it. Jay says oil is already down 15%. Dottie, refinancing national debt. It looks like the Federal Reserve isn't going anywhere. Dave, oil just dropped below $60 a barrel today, which is amazing. Yes, Glenn, crude oil is down big. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I remember when it was up. I don't know what it ever reached at the highest, but I remember reporting on it. It was like 109, $110 a barrel, being projected to go up to 150, $160 a barrel, which is just absolutely insane. And Robert, Hitler did the same thing, brought Germany out of their depression. Bankers were not happy with, I didn't know any, I did not know that, but it's a tough time. People are looking at these tariffs, but I'll tell you what, there are 50 different countries who have contacted the Trump administration, said, hey, let's work out a deal. Vietnam going to drop their tariffs against the United States. Israel, of course, already has. There's all of these countries who say, okay, well, we get it. We see where you're coming from. And let's work together to make sure this doesn't happen. Now, China is not there yet, but the market in China today is not good. And China is going to be one of those countries where they're going to be very difficult to work with. Of course they are. We slapped them, with what was it, 34%? They slapped us back with 34%, something along those lines. And then Donald Trump said, we're not, don't retaliate against us with these tariffs. Don't retaliate us. We have been paying out this money for a really long time to a lot of different countries. And it's time that America, makes a little bit money back. And, they're digging us out of the hole. Before Donald Trump came into office this time around, we were probably about a step away from being fully bankrupt. We probably literally were fully bankrupt, except for the Biden administration kept pumping up the numbers, making it look like things were a little better than what they really were, because they didn't want to say that we were in a depression under the Biden administration. Now look what's happening. We have money coming into this country, billions of dollars a day from these reciprocal tariffs. And unlike what some people have said, there's a lot of liberals out there saying, oh, well, it's not really doing anything. There's a delay. The tariffs aren't in place. No, the tariffs are already in place. We're already making money on these tariffs. And guess what that money is going to do? That's going to replace the income tax that you pay into the government. And guess what? When you're not paying income tax into the government, there's nothing left to steal. There's just nothing left to steal. And, I was reading this story, speaking of stealing and how the government stole from us. This was something that was uncovered by Doge. Maybe you've heard about this, maybe you haven't. But it says Doge found, now there was a software engineer, whenever they went through the VA, remember how Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, recently went through the VA and went through all their records? This is crazy. It says they found that there was a software engineer. This guy was paid to do light modifications on the website, 10 hours a week of light modifications. Not a lot. They were paying him, get this, $380,000 a month to do 10 hours of very minimal work to the VA website. I mean, that's stealing money from veterans, literally stealing money from veterans. It came out to 4.5 million a year. This guy was being paid, it came out to $8,700 an hour. That's your money that was being paid to this guy. And then you got to ask, like, okay, well, the guy, can you blame the guy? Did he take advantage of the system, or was the government just paying him this outrageous amount of money? Were they getting a kickback on the other end of it? But I am a little bit concerned, because I think that the powers that be, the deep state, they realize that the game is over for them. If we Americans are not paying in income taxes and property taxes, they don't have anything left to steal. And then where are they going to go from there? I don't think they're going to let the game be over. And that really does worry me. Jay says gas prices are up because of the switch to summer blend. I'm not sure what you mean, Jay. Are you saying that's true or not true? And then Robert says, what I believe is happening worldwide, there is more interest owed on the debts than the total money supply. That makes a lot of sense. Thus, instability, wars, mayhem, and unrest. And Robert, we're going to talk a lot about mayhem, instability, wars, and unrest today because there's a lot going on. And yeah, right, Dottie, nothing but a massive laundromat. You know, I'm very concerned. I have to say, I'm very concerned today. I still have a lot of liberal friends, and I don't maybe talk to them every day, but I see the things they're talking about. And you know what they're talking about? They're talking about going to something called a resist lab. Do you know what a resist lab is? A resist lab is where you go to learn how to fight, and not always physical fighting, but it's where you go to learn how to become a better protester. They give you your free signs. They give you your little sheets of things to say, your little talking points. They teach you that we, the conservatives, are the enemy and how we all need to be cleansed of this earth. And it promotes, in my opinion, it promotes violence. And even though they try to say, oh, we're not trying to promote violence, well, when you use a certain type of rhetoric with people, yes, you are absolutely promoting violence. And it's getting to the point where it started out with keying Teslas, and it's becoming an entirely different entity right now. And we know what this is about. These are paid actors. And hey, good morning, Charles. The tariffs will achieve the intended goal. This is a huge buying opportunity in the investment markets. It doesn't matter what is going on in the world. Greed will always be front and center. Investors, foreign and domestic, can't resist the addiction of greed. You got that right. Investing is like a cocaine addiction. To satisfy the addiction, you must you must increasingly do more. Also true. Trump will prevail. You know what? You are absolutely right. Good morning, Annette. Trump will absolutely prevail. Absolutely will prevail. I'm going to show you something here.
Here's
this is Boston.
Take
a look
Boston,
at this.
Massachusetts now as we check back in on one of our top stories, anti-Trump protests taking place across the country today after a tumultuous week, to say the least, on Wall Street and the economy. We want to point out, just a few minutes ago, we did show you a protest. We said it was Boston. It was not Boston. It was an unrelated protest. But what you are looking at right now is Boston, and I'm from there. I can recognize this. This is the plaza right outside of City Hall.
Boston, allegedly 20,000 people at that protest in Boston. Now, these are not organic protests. I could show you a bunch of others just like that one. These are not organic protests. These are people being bussed in, being paid, some of them being paid as much as $8,000 a week to come out and protest. Allegedly, you're paid based on how far you're willing to go. And I'm sure some of you, and here's what's so crazy. I can't even show you the video or the posters of these signs, because if I do, I will be accused of being the violent one. Yet these people are out there holding these signs that say 8647, and what that means is unalive 47. 86 stands for unalive, 47 of course being Donald Trump. Now, how is this okay? And you will see these signs all over these protests. They want us to be harmed. They want us to be unalived. And I'm hearing an awful lot of talk from people I know who are more sensible liberals who say, you know what, I'm sitting this out. As much as I would like to be out there with other people, this is going to turn into a civil war. And there are lives that are going to be lost because my people are very angry and they're not going to back down. They're going to these resist labs and they're being taught to hate the opposing Americans, which is us. And that these people are going to stop at absolutely nothing because of, it's all based on lies and propaganda. Every last bit of it is based on lies and propaganda. Take a look at this, at little Pocahontas herself spreading hate.
Social Security is a program that people pay for all of their working lives. 73 million Americans depend on Social Security, and they paid for those Social Security benefits. Out of every paycheck They were putting money into the Social Security system on the sacred promise that when the time came that they were no longer working, they would be able to count on Social Security for food, for a roof over their heads, for some real financial security. Elon Musk and Donald Trump are breaking that sacred promise. It was Congress that passed the laws that created Social Security. And it is Congress and only Congress that can cut those Social Security benefits. So you would think Elon Musk and Donald Trump, Republicans are in the majority right here in the Senate, over in the House of Representatives. If they really want to cut Social Security, then do it out in the open.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, having two parents that receive Social Security, there's no problem with Social Security. There is no problem with Social Security. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. I even had a disabled family member who was also getting their Social Security. There's been no lapse, but there's been no delay. The amount has not decreased in any shape or form, nor is there any fear that these things will happen. In fact, it's only going to get better because we have, of course, Donald Trump pushing to make sure that Social Security is not taxed. It's already not taxed in some states. He's pushing for it to not get taxed in all states. But you know what, Linda? You're right, liar. That is exactly what Elizabeth Warren is. She is a liar. And yes, Kim says $8,000 a week sounds tempting. It's a lot of money, but that's exactly what it is they're paying people. And I've noticed a lot of these people at protests are elderly, and then I started hearing these stories. Well, they're elderly because that's the front they want us to see, because in the meantime, they're all training in some resist lab to come. And that's literally what it's called. You can look it up. It's called a resist lab. That's kind of a new term for me. I'm just learning about these resist labs. And Linda, some liberal friends protested in Fairview Heights. They had friends praising them. People who have no idea what they're doing is what that is. And it's absolutely crazy. And Jay says the amount from Social Security is abysmally low. It is. People cannot survive on Social Security. They absolutely cannot survive on Social Security. But who is robbing Social Security? It's the Democrats. I bet some of that money went into Elizabeth Warren's pocket. I'll bet you it did. It is the Democrats robbing Social Security, but they don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. And Robert says Social Security isn't invested in the market. So what's Warren's problem? Who knows? She just is a problem. And Mr. Rahomi, let's see. How does anyone expect change or reform or revolving issues if everyone's idea of communication is this expectation that everyone understands the same thing and can read between the lines of the blather and the rhetoric and the chaos? Or they expect everyone else to figure it out or have blind faith or trust the same people that have burned them time and time again. I don't think that these people out protesting even know what they're protesting. I mean, I hate to show you guys these videos or to give these people some airtime, but it's like some of these protests. I'm not going to play the whole video, but this is just crazy. These people have no idea what they're protesting. I think it's just their way to act out aggressively. They just want to be aggressive. And when you see these videos, you're going to see exactly what we're up against. And what worries me is these people are so dumb that they might actually become violent.
I just realized they're warmer in there, too.
Oh, there.
These people.
So what makes Trump a fascist?
Uninformed is what those people are.
What makes Trump a fascist?
He does things without
Yeah, talk loud. I don't have my mic on.
I'm not really good into interviews stuff like that.
Sorry?
He just does everything he wants and not following laws or he's a convicted felon, that's all I know.
But your sign says he's a fascist, and I'm just curious what makes him a fascist.
One of the things is that he's trying to control the media, right?
Say that again?
He's trying to control the narrative.
How is he trying to control the media? Doesn't every president try to control the narrative?
They try to control their own narrative, but one of the things that Trump's has done, for example, is the renaming the Gulf of Mexico, and then not allowing the Associated Press to come into the White House. Basically, trying to get.
What are your feelings about him renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America when a majority of the Gulf is in fact on the coast of America as opposed to Mexico?
I mean, it's kind of pointless. People.
Is it pointless?
Yeah, people call it the Gulf of Mexico. What's the
Don't
point
you think
of
it could have
changing
a
the name?
positive tourism impact potentially?
Tourism has been down heavily.
So I don't want to get into a tourism debate. My question is, the sign says the fascist Trump regime must go.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious what makes him a fascist. You pointed out that maybe something about his relationship with the media, he wants to control it, but how? Again, you're calling him a fascist.
Yeah, well,
what makes him a fascist?
One of the core tenets of fascism is creating an enemy, right, and blaming those problems on
What's
the enemy.
that?
Oh, yeah,
So-
the paper gave me, yeah.
Who gave you that?
The people that gave me the sign. It's a free sign.
Oh, someone gave you the sign,
Yeah.
and then they gave you the handout.
Yeah.
So are you reading it now to try to answer the question?
Yeah, but I mean...
Can I see that? Can you hold that up?
I'm just not...
No, I'm just curious.
You can have it.
I can have it?
Yeah, you can have it.
Alrighty. So where did you get the sign?
All the way in
These people have no idea. They're told, hey, show up. We'll pay you $200. We'll give you a gift voucher. They're being bussed in. There's videos of the buses coming in. Who's paying for the buses? And we find out George Soros, guess what? He got $260 million out of, you said, USAID, $260 million. And I can guarantee you that $260 million was used against us. It's being used against us. We are paying for our own civil war because I'll tell you what, these people are just dumb enough. They literally, I'm sorry to say that, but they are just dumb enough to actually try to fight with us and try to harm us. And there's a video I can't even show you of supporters who were talking about how they wanted Donald Trump and his supporters to be dead, to be unalived. That's what they want. I mean, these people are violent. They're dangerous. It's coming. I know it is. I don't know what's going to happen, what we're going to be able to do about it. I would like to say that Donald Trump, of course, does have law enforcement they're just waiting for the shoe to drop because it is going to happen. And they know it's going to happen. These people are about to lose their minds. Kimberly says, protesting is trending and they want to be part of the movement and media op. They absolutely have no idea why. And it's all based on lies and propaganda. Daddy says they don't even know what they are protesting about. They don't. Yeah, Robert, it's tough to tell these days, isn't it? They have no clue. They don't. Good morning, Kim. And Charles, they paid for fake demonstrations. That kid didn't make that sign. No, that's just it. You know what? These people did not make their signs. They did not organically get up in the morning and say, hey, I'm ready to go fight for the cause. Let's get up. Let's make our signs. Let's go to Washington, D.C. or Boston or wherever they might be going. And just organically, it doesn't work that way. They all know what these resist labs are. They all know who pays the paychecks. You can go online right now and look it up, and you can find a place that is willing to pay you to go out to one of these protests. And that's why they all arrive at the same time. They all leave at the same time. They're being paid. Their lodging is being paid. Their meals are being paid. Their transportation is being paid. You're seeing these bus load upon bus load of people arriving, 20,000 people in Boston. And, yes, there are some people out there who are legitimately, I say legitimately as in their heart, they really think that they have to stop Donald Trump and Elon Musk. But that's because they're watching too much MSNBC. They really have no idea what's going on. And they don't. They have no idea what is going on. And they're listening to the lies and propaganda. But the problem is that the lies and the propaganda are making them feel. It's all about emotion. These people are all very emotional. I think sometimes that's what divides us and them, is that they're living on emotion and not fact. They don't know what the facts are. They're watching CNN, they're watching MSNBC, and they're seeing these lies and this propaganda. A lot of them aren't even watching news at all. They really have no idea. They're being told. There's another video that I didn't play because it was so incredibly violent against conservatives and Donald Trump that I knew if I play it, I'll be the one to get in trouble for playing it. Not because they're not going to get in trouble for doing it or saying it. I'll get in trouble for talking about it. And it was pretty wild because they kept going on and on about how Donald Trump is destroying the Constitution, how he's taken away their rights, he's taken away their freedoms, and how he's abolishing all of these different amendments in the Constitution. And I'm thinking, man, you people have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. We're talking about the stock market crashing and how Donald Trump is forcing, all the people to be poor. And I'm like, okay, dummies. Do any of you own stock? I can almost guarantee you that most of the people at these protests have absolutely zero stock whatsoever. And they just simply don't get it. Margie says they are working. Yes, so working in two ways. A, they are working because they're getting paid to be there. And B, they are working because this propaganda campaign is absolutely working. And I really do worry about where it's going to go. Because when you have a group of people who hate us to the point that they hate us, violence is bound to happen. And right now it might be happening to Teslas and Tesla dealerships, but it's just a matter of time before it turns around and that violence is upon us, the people, because they're getting to the point of frustration and there's no end in sight for them. And what happens when people get desperate and they feel like there's no end in sight? They lash out. And I hate to say this, but we've given them the rope and now they're hanging themselves with it. We've allowed them to come out and peacefully protest, do whatever they want to do. Most of us aren't even paying attention. We've got bigger, better things going on than worrying about these people. We're trying to save the world after all. And these idiots are just out there. They have no idea what's going on. I wish somebody would come on the show who is one of these people and talk about why they are out there protesting. Why do they hate Donald Trump and Elon Musk so much? I can bet you my life that it's all based on lies and propaganda. And then in the one video, I don't know if it was this one or the other one where they talk about how, Donald Trump's trying to control the media. I think it was the one I just played. And Democrats have literally paid to control the media for decades, literally paid money to these media stations for decades to control the narrative, but they don't get it. They'll never be told the truth. They'll never believe the truth. Jay says zero stock and unemployed. Exactly. That's why they're all there at the protest. Bunch of unemployed folks. And D says, look up a communist named Bob Avakian. Oh, I know exactly who that is. His organization is the one paying for the protesters. You can find out all about him on Wikipedia. His name is on that paperwork that protester had. Yeah, D, he's a communist. He's part of the Communist Party. And they cause a lot of problems. The Communist Party causes a lot of problems. And I believe he is associated with he's either the RevCom, the Revolutionary Communist Party, or he's part of LPL. But that's exactly why I feel like civil war is on our doorstep, because of guys exactly like that. Because I'll tell you what they do, and it's getting ready to happen again. These violent protests like we saw during the George Floyd times, during the Mike Brown times, are coming. And this guy, and I'm so glad you said that, Dee, because this is exactly how we know. Because how did those protests start? How did they become violent? I'll tell you exactly how they became violent is RevCom, the Revolutionary Communist Party, LPL, who is kind of a sister Communist Party group. These people have a lot of money. They've raised a lot of money through programs like NGOs and non-governmental organizations. They get money from people like George Soros, and their sole purpose is to cause chaos and mayhem. And what they did and how they got these riots started in the Mike Brown times and in the George Floyd times is and they're all white, by the way. These are all white people. As a matter of fact, they hate people of color. Their only goal is to start problems. So they'll come out to these peaceful protests. And then what they will do is they will, of course, pay people to come to the protest. That's how they get their narrative going. And then they're the first person to throw the brick through a window, throw the Molotov cocktail, at a police officer, or to, throw those bottled frozen water bottles at police. And then they back up into the crowd. And I know some of you saw it as well as I did, especially during the Ferguson times, because they were in Ferguson. They were coming around to schools, leaving leaflets, to children about the Communist Party and what they were doing. And I know it happened on Grand. I know it happened in Ferguson. They mix in with the crowd, and they know exactly what they're doing. They mix in with the crowd. They disperse around, so you can't really pinpoint them as being a group. They don't look like a group. They look like individual people. And then they're very well armed with whatever it is they're going to be using that day: rocks, bricks, bats, you name it, they have it. And then what they'll do is they'll step up kind of to the front. They'll throw their rock or their brick or, their Molotov cocktail. Then they scoot back into the crowd. And then it gets the mob mentality going. And then the folks who are just there to peacefully protest, they get caught up in the mix. And then all of a sudden we have police, tear gassing crowds and the crowds fighting back. It just creates chaos. And that's their goal. And when you see people like this being involved and you know that these people are being paid, these people are pawns. They're so dumb that they don't understand that they are pawns. They're being bussed in and paid to go to these rallies that are very soon going to turn violent, because people like LPL and RevCom, that's all they know is violence and chaos. And these people, RevCom, the communists, they're against all forms of government. They're not Democrats. They're not Republicans. They're anti-government altogether. Their goal is, and Antifa is a big part of it as well. If you guys saw some of the ICE trucks near Tom Homan's house, where they had some pretty serious protests over the weekend, they vandalized the ICE trucks and they had their little A for Antifa written all over the trucks. That doesn't mean it was Antifa, but as you can see by these people, they definitely look like Antifa, don't they? It's a very big situation, and I'm telling you, it's coming. It is definitely coming. Jay says DOJ is quickly showing them the violence will not be ignored like it was under Biden. You're right, Jay. And that's one thing we have to remember is we're in a different situation right now when it comes to law enforcement than what we were back then. However, what we also have to remember, there's a very fine line that law enforcement has to walk, because you have people who will come out and become very violent. Not only will we end up in a civil war, but we'll end up in a race war, because there are a lot of people out there who I don't agree with them at all by any means, but that they think that police are racist and violent, and they feel that they have the right to fight police. And so we have to be very careful with how that, proceeds. And they have to use a certain amount, I think, of restraint when in some of these situations. I don't think they should have to, but if we don't want an all-out war in this country, we're going to have to show some type of restraint. But I see it coming. I think some of you guys do too. It's leading up to something. When they're getting all these people together, 20,000 people, Boston, thousands of people in other parts of the country, it is all going to lead up to something. And do your homework and look up these resist labs where they're using your taxpayer money to teach violence, to teach people to hate us. And when people start getting that ideology in their heads that their problems are all because of us, they're poor because of us, their rights are being taken away because of us. They're like little zombie robots who are just going to do anything that's put into their head. And as you can see by watching some of these videos, these people are not intelligent at all. They're very easily manipulated, which is exactly why they're on the left, because they have been brainwashed and manipulated by the fake media all along. And pretty soon the fake media is going to pull that switch and these people are going to go absolutely insane. And Robert says, left is looking for a spark to inflame civil unrest. You better believe they are, because they want Donald Trump out. They want to get rid of us. They want to stop us. And it's so crazy to me, because here we are literally making the country great again, and they can't see it. These people have no idea what's going on. It's really frustrating to me. Really frustrating to me. On another note, there's a lot of other things going on. And is Rebecca, it's like so much going on. It's like, where do you even start? I think most of us have driven around enough through our neighborhoods on the highways. We've seen a lot of the crash truck, big diesel crashes lately to know that a lot of the problems are related to drivers who are illegal in our country, driving our trucks across the roads, long haul truck drivers, if I can get the right words out, and they're causing crashes because they don't understand English. They don't speak English. They don't read English. They're not able to follow the signs. They don't know where they're going. They don't know our traffic laws. They don't know how to drive. And somehow they end up behind the wheel of a semi tractor trailer. And it's really gotten a little bit crazy. Every single day, I'm seeing these crashes every single day throughout social media. And of course, not every time is an illegal involved, but quite often it is. And I talked to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago who is a state trooper, and he said, you know what, we're having a lot of problems right now for exactly these reasons, because we have a lot of people on the road who don't speak or read English. They really have no idea where they're going. They don't know how to follow the laws, and they're pulling them over left and right. They're trying to get them as much as they can. And I thought this was kind of interesting, but there was a trucker that was who did a little like TikTok talking about how now finally law enforcement is cracking down. They're going to these different truck stops or going to the way stations, and they're finding people, truck drivers, who don't speak or read English. I mean, come on, it's about time. So I'm gonna play this little clip here for you to look at really quickly.
Couldn't believe it. Going through Arkansas, I thought it was a joke. Got stopped at the way station in Arkansas and was handed a piece of paper, and it says, "Can you read and write English?" I said, "Yes, sir, I sure can." He goes, "Can you read this?" So I read it to myself, and I was like, okay. I started handing it back. He goes, no, read it out loud for me. So I read it out loud for him, and it was short and sweet, no problem. He goes, "Now, can you write this for me on this paper?" And I did, and there was a whole bunch of people that had already written on it. And I was actually witnessing people in handcuffs that had been pulled in, and I was like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "Oh, we've come across now that if you cannot read or write in English, that it's a $5,000 fine, and if you have a company in Arkansas that employs people that can't read or write in English, it's a $10,000 fine paid on the spot. If you cannot pay it, you're automatically arrested and lose your license." What a shocker.
I think it's funny how his voice to text type thing spelled Arkansas with a W at the end. But it's absolutely true. We should not have people behind the wheels in our country that can't speak or read English. That absolutely should not happen. While that video was playing, there was some breaking news that came through, and it was a video. I don't have time to load up the video. So the European Union, we have, of course, the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, the same person who said that freedom of speech is a virus. She has stated, this just came in, European Union, they're offering the United States to abolish reciprocal tariffs on industrial goods. See, they're all falling into place. And this is exactly what is supposed to happen. Donald Trump just now made this statement. He said the United States has a chance to do something that it should have done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be in a panic. Or I think he says, don't be a panic in, whatever that is. Oh, he said, oh, I see. I didn't read far enough ahead. He said, don't be a panic in. A panic in is a new party based on weak and stupid people. He made up a new word. Be strong, courageous, and patient, and greatness will be the result. And I couldn't agree more. Stellantis just said today, or maybe it was yesterday, that they're going, Stellantis, they make Jeeps, they make trucks, they make the motors for Jeeps and different things, that they're closing a plant they have in Mexico. They're closing a plant in Canada. And guess what they're doing? They're moving operations here to the United States. They're going to hire hundreds of workers here in the United States to work at Stellantis. Remember not too long ago when Stellantis was laying off people? There was a point, and I remember talking about this, where Stellantis had so many Jeep engines that they didn't know what to do with them. Thousands of Jeep engines with no Jeeps to put them in. People just were not paying $95,000 for a Jeep Wrangler. They just weren't. And they had this overabundance of Jeep parts, and they were laying off people. I think they laid off, was it 1,000 people? Stellantis did. And now guess what? Boy, the tables have changed, haven't they? The tables have definitely turned, closing their plants in Canada, closing their plant in Mexico, opening up another plant here in the United States. You cannot beat it. Robert says, what the tariff stuff proves is that globalism does not work. You know, Robert, interesting you say that, because Keir Starmer, of course, over in the UK, who I feel is a communist himself, he's supposed to, I can't prove this is true. I read it's true. He is supposed to make a statement today saying that globalism is over. Globalism has ended. And that what the United States did is what Donald Trump did with tariffs was actually a smart move on his part. Now, I have a hard time believing that Keir Starmer is going to say those words, but allegedly, I don't know, some type of report was leaked out, part of his speech that he's going to make. But, you know, it is absolutely fantastic. Billions of dollars coming into the United States instead of going out, you know, bolster America first. Isn't that what it's supposed to be about? America first. Robert says trucking companies are dropping like flies. And Robert says, not a good thing. No, Robert, it's not a good thing. But you know what? It is the trucking industry's fault. They have done this to themselves. They hired all of these illegals to work and drive their trucks, and never thinking that this would happen, that Donald Trump would put an end to it. And yes, if we have a problem with truck drivers off the road, it could lead potentially to a complete economic collapse. Trucking companies did it to themselves, and I don't know how we fix it. You know, like a lot of other industries in this country, if people can pay somebody a lot less money to work a job, and then you go to the extreme where a good portion or a majority of your workers are illegal because you're paying them lesser wages than you would someone else, well, guess what's going to happen when it all goes bust? And we're going to face a very serious point here potentially with these trucking companies. And, you know, not only that, but a lot of these folks being deported are also truck drivers, believe it or not. Because one thing the government did is when a lot of these people came in, even as legal refugees, they were getting jobs in the trucking industry. Because, you know what, if you come to a country and you don't have any skills and you don't really have a way to get a job, well, it's pretty darn easy to get behind the wheel of a truck. So we'll see how that turns out. Mary, a bill in New York would prohibit police for traffic stops for minor violations to further social equity. Isn't that insane? Absolutely, absolutely insane. Jay said, you're giddy? Is that what you mean to say? Drives a truck. He said the majority of truck stops are non-English speaking drivers. That's right, Jay. And it's pretty crazy. I live in a rural area, but we have a big truck stop here. And if you go to the local Walmart, there's literally 2 stores in town. There is an Aldi here. You have Walmart, you have Rural King, and there's an Aldi. That's it. There's nothing else. And so if you go to the Walmart here, which of course everyone does because there's really not a lot of options, there's a truck stop right there. And so people are constantly, truck drivers are coming in and they never speak English. You know, they're getting stuff at the deli, and it's a pretty crazy situation, no question about it. Oh, buddy. Jeez. Yeah, I was going to say, what's a giddy? You would say, buddy. Robert, Obama has the nerve to criticize Trump about the mortality of the treatment of the mainstream media when Barack literally signed an executive order making it legal for the CIA to lie and propagandize the American people in 2016, giving Operation Mockingbird free rein. Where is Obama these days? Don't hear much about him, do we? A lot of reports that he's getting a divorce because he maybe unalived his boyfriend in Martha's Vineyard, and that, what was it, a 4-foot pool of water, a 4-foot pond, and the guy was on a surfboard and somehow drowned. I hear he's getting an awful lot of flack for that these days. We don't hear a lot about Obama, do we? Not really much of a word. General McGregor mentioned Obama, how he was, of course, funneling money, laundering money down, I believe it was in the Cayman Islands, Not another word about it, not another word. And you don't hear anything about Obama. And there's a reason why. I think they're scared of him, quite honestly. Elon Musk, never heard him mention the word Obama. Donald Trump, sure haven't heard him say Obama, has he? He's talked about Hillary Clinton. He's talked about, as a matter of fact, he's after Bill Clinton right now. I'm not really sure what's on the agenda for Bill Clinton, but he's going to next on the chopping block. You hear Donald Trump talk about all these different people, but you never hear him talk about Obama. I seriously think they're scared of Obama. I really do. I absolutely do. And I think that they know that that's a CIA operation that you will be unalived if you discuss. And Robert says egg prices are down 63%. Why doesn't the media talk about it? Well, they're not going to talk about anything good. They're not going to talk about anything good. Jay says Obama's endorsement of Harris, major backfire. Think it hurt the credibility. I don't think he wanted to endorse Harris. I think he just got to the point where he had no choice. I think that was probably his last pick of anyone that there could be was Kamala Harris. So I don't think he had any choice. But I do think it's kind of interesting because I think his plans for the global agenda are gone. Remember that 30-year plan that they all had? Nah, not anymore. We put a big wrench in that now, didn't we? And you know that what's going on in the stock market, it's hurting those folks at the top. And I'm not talking about the wealthy people in our community that we all know. I'm talking about the people that we don't know, the people who really pull the strings in this country. They're the folks who created the stock market. They're the people who want you to put your money into the stock market so that they can take your money, basically. And they're the ones who are stealing all of our tax dollars. And we're getting ready to come to a point now where things are in motion with Donald Trump, to where we're really close to not having to pay income taxes any longer. A lot of our taxes are going to go away because of the money that we're saving through these reciprocal tariffs and through the interest rate drops and everything else that's going on. We'll see what happens with the closed door Federal Reserve meeting today. But I'm telling you, things are getting ready to go to a place where I don't think most of us want to see them. And I think we're going to expect some kickbacks here in the way of violence coming our direction. And Robert just posted some good a little update of the stock market today, G. But again, Japan closed their stock market earlier. Hong Kong, I heard Hong Kong was getting hit hard too. They're down, 13.2%. It's pretty bad. But you know what? Think about it. They're losing and we're winning. Think about that. Finally, America first. That's what we got to think about. America first. Jay, majority of stocks held by the top 1%. I read a breakdown the other day and it said 0.01% of Americans hold 18% of all the stocks. Then the next tier is the 1%. They own another 18% of the lower stocks. And then the rest of the people are the people who, again, are in debt, who are paying credit card debt, who are living paycheck to paycheck. So, I don't think that these stock market crashes affect many people. And if you have stock and you are feeling that hurt, you know what? Just hold it out, ride the wave. They will go back up. If anything, see it as a sale. If you haven't bought into the stock market, now maybe is actually the time to do that. Jay says these lower prices at the stock market will eventually lead to a massive buying spree. That's exactly right, Jay. We're going to cut interest rates. That's going to help all Americans, particularly the ones who need it the most. We're going to get rid of these income taxes, get rid of a lot of our state, local taxes, from what I hear, on different items, not everything, but on certain items. Florida looking to get rid of personal property taxes. And of course, Donald Trump said he would like to see every state get rid of personal property taxes. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? Especially if you live in Missouri, their personal property taxes are outrageous. Peggy says, good time to buy a Tesla. You got that right. Now is the time to buy. Well, guys, we have a lot more to talk about tomorrow. I think that's all we've got for today. But, I can't wait to talk to Colonel Joe Adams on Wednesday, because I really want to know what he feels about, everything that's going on with these resist labs, and are leftists being trained to fight. Is there a civil war coming? Are we going to get to this point in which the folks at the very top, the deep state, where they're desperate because they've got to stop the bleeding? And the only way to do that is to break out into a civil war. It's the only way to stop it. So we'll see what happens. And Jay says, Illinois will raise taxes before they ever eliminate. Man, you've got that right, Jay. It's insane. Absolutely. The taxes in Illinois are absolutely ridiculous. All right, guys. Well, that's it for me today. I've got a lot more to talk about tomorrow. Lots of things going on. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the situation. There's a hospital in Massachusetts where 17 nurses all have brain tumors. They all work in a maternity ward. And of course, the hospital says, "Oh, it's not related. We don't have anything to do with that." 17 nurses, one hospital ward, all have brain tumors. It's like, what is going on there? So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Lots of other things going on between now and then. We'll also get to. And other than that, I hope you guys have a really great day. I will look forward to talking to you tomorrow. And I can't believe it's Monday, but it is. Oh, you know what? We'll talk about our sourdough breads tomorrow too. I don't know if any of you started your sourdough bread starter, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Have a good day, everyone. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'm Tabitha with Tabs.